The last time Naomi Caldwell saw Marcus Westbrook, she was standing in the doorway of his apartment with a box of her things and tears she refused to let fall. He didn't chase her. She told herself that meant she made the right call. 6 years later, she walked into the most important meeting of her career, set her portfolio on the conference table, looked up and saw him sitting at the head of it, Marcus Westbrook, the man she left, the man who had somehow, quietly, become one of the most powerful men in Atlanta. And the way he looked at her when their eyes met told her one thing clearly. He had been waiting. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you emotional stories that stay with you. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss a story. And if you're returning, thank you. Your support means everything. Now, stay until the end, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let's begin. Naomi got the call on a Tuesday morning while she was eating leftover shrimp and grits standing over her kitchen sink in Chicago. Her business partner, Bree, was screaming so loud on the other end that Naomi had to hold the phone away from her ear. "They want us," Bree said. Westbrook Tower, the new mixed-use development going up in Midtown Atlanta. "Naomi, this is a $5 million interior design contract. This is the one we've been waiting for." Naomi put her fork down. $5 million. That was not a number she had ever said out loud in relation to her own company. She and Bree had built Caldwell Creative from nothing, working out of Naomi's second bedroom for 2 years before they could afford real office space. They had done hotels, restaurants, 2 boutique spas, and a medical complex. Good work. Solid work. But nothing like this. Who's the client? Naomi asked. Some holding company. The paperwork says WBX Holdings. All I know is they've seen our portfolio, and they specifically requested us. Naomi, they requested us. She said yes before she even finished the thought. The flight to Atlanta was smooth. Naomi sat by the window and watched the city come into view, all that red Georgia clay and sprawling green, and felt something move in her chest that she told herself was just nerves. She had not been back to Atlanta in 4 years. She had reasons for that. She had kept those reasons tidy and packed away like winter clothes in a storage bin. The meeting was at 9 in the morning on the 14th floor of a glass building in Midtown. Naomi wore her burgundy blazer over a cream blouse, her locks pinned up, portfolio under her arm. She and Bree walked in together. The conference room was already half full. People in suits on laptops, someone pouring coffee near the window. Naomi set her portfolio on the table and looked up to introduce herself to whoever was leading the meeting, and the whole room went quiet inside her head. Marcus Westbrook was sitting at the head of that table, older than she remembered, but not in a bad way. In that way that 6 years does to a man who has been through something real. His face was the same face she used to touch in the dark. His hazel eyes found hers before she could look away, and they stayed there, calm and steady, like he had already known she was going to walk through that door. Naomi did not move. She was not sure she was breathing. It was Bree who broke the silence by pulling out her chair and sitting down with a warm, professional smile, completely unaware that the temperature in the room had just changed entirely. Marcus looked at Naomi for 3 more seconds, then looked at Bree and said, "Thank you both for making the trip. I've followed Caldwell Creative's work for a while. I'm glad you're here." His voice was the same. Lower maybe, more settled. Naomi sat down and opened her portfolio and told herself she was a professional. She told herself this was business. She told herself the 6 years that had passed were long enough to make this manageable. She almost believed it. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. Marcus let his team lead most of it, a sharp woman named Patricia, who walked them through the scope and the timeline, the vision for the tower, the way Marcus wanted the interiors to feel. "Not cold," Patricia kept saying. "He wants people to walk in and feel like they belong there." Naomi wrote notes. She asked the right questions. She did not look at Marcus more than she had to, but every time she did look at him, he was already looking at her, not staring, not performing anything, just looking, the way you look at something you've thought about for a long time and are still deciding what to do about. When the meeting ended and people started gathering their things, Marcus stood and said, "Ms. Caldwell, could I have a few minutes?" Bree gave Naomi a look that said everything and nothing at the same time. Naomi told her she would meet her downstairs. The room emptied. Marcus came around the table slowly, no rush, and stopped a few feet from her. Up close, she could see the slight gray at his temples. A small scar near his jaw she did not recognize. 6 years was a long time. "I thought about calling you first," he said, "to give you the choice." "But you didn't," she said. "No," he said, "I didn't." Naomi looked at him. "Is this the project or is this something else?" "It's both," he said. "The project is real. The contract is real. Everything Patricia walked you through is exactly what it is. Your work earned you that room today, not me." He paused. "But I'm not going to pretend I didn't know you would be the one who walked in." The honesty of that hit her somewhere she was not prepared for. "Marcus," she started. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just didn't want to start this with something between us that neither of us named. You can walk away from the project. I'll make sure Caldwell Creative is compensated for your time regardless. Or you can stay and we can be professionals. Either way, I needed you to know I knew." Naomi picked up her portfolio. She looked at him one more time. "I'll let you know by end of day," she said. She walked out, got into the elevator, stood very still as the doors closed. Then she pressed her back against the elevator wall and let out the breath she had been holding since the moment she saw his face. Naomi called Bree from the rental car in the parking garage and told her everything. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Bree said, "Marcus Westbrook is WBX Holdings." "Yes. The man you left in Atlanta 6 years ago is now offering us the biggest contract of our entire career." "Yes." "Naomi, I know." "No, I don't think you do know, because you sound very calm right now. And I need you to understand that I am not calm. My hands are shaking. Are you taking the project?" Naomi looked through the windshield at the concrete wall in front of her. She had built something real over 6 years. She and Bree had sacrificed weekends and relationships and sleep and comfort to get Caldwell Creative to where it was. $5 million was not just a number. It was a thing that would allow them to hire a full team, open a second office, stop saying no to projects because they didn't have capacity. It was the door to the next level of everything they had worked for. She also knew that Marcus Westbrook had a way of making her feel things she had spent 6 years learning how not to feel. "I'm taking the project," she said. Bree exhaled. "Okay, good. Professional. Smart. We keep it strictly business." "Strictly business," Naomi agreed. She stayed in Atlanta. The firm put her up in a hotel 2 blocks from a construction site, a nice place with a rooftop terrace and a restaurant on the ground floor that smelled like garlic and butter every time she walked through the lobby. She told herself she would be in and out in 3 weeks, get the concept boards approved, set the direction, fly back to Chicago and manage the rest remotely. That was the plan. The first site visit was the next morning. Naomi showed up in work clothes, her locks pulled back, notebook in hand. Marcus was already there in a hard hat and a dark jacket, standing with a construction lead looking at a wall of exposed concrete, like it had personally offended him. He turned when he heard her footsteps and nodded once, professional and clean. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she said. And that was how they started. Professional and clean. She walked the space for 2 hours, taking photos, making notes, asking questions. The building was extraordinary. 32 floors of glass and steel with bones that had real potential. The kind of space that made a designer want to sit down and cry a little because of how much possibility was sitting right there in the concrete. Marcus walked with her for part of it, answered questions when she asked them, stayed quiet when she didn't. He was good at that. She had forgotten that about him. He had always known when to be quiet. At one point, they were standing on the 8th floor looking out to the open frame, where floor-to-ceiling windows would eventually go, the whole Atlanta skyline sitting out there in the morning light. And Naomi said without thinking, "This city looks different from up here." Marcus stood beside her and said, "It looks different when you have something to show for the years." She glanced at him. He was still looking at the skyline. She wrote that down in her notebook, even though it had nothing to do with interior design. The weeks settled into a rhythm. Naomi would spend her mornings on site or working from a corner table at the hotel restaurant with her concept board spread out around her coffee cup. Afternoons, she was usually in calls with vendors and contractors. A few times a week, Marcus would appear, either on site or at the table across the lobby with his own laptop, and they would work near each other in a way that was comfortable in a manner she did not want examined too closely. They started talking again slowly, not about the past, about the work, about Atlanta, about what the city had become and what it still needed. One evening, they ended up eating dinner at the hotel restaurant at the same time, sitting at separate tables for about 10 minutes before Marcus picked up his plate and walked over and said, "This is unnecessary." She laughed before she could stop herself. It was the first time she had laughed in front of him, and the sound of it seemed to catch him off guard too, because he smiled in that quiet way he had, the one that started in his eyes before it reached his mouth. They ate dinner together. They talked about food, about his grandmother's cornbread that he said no restaurant had ever come close to replicating, about the Sunday dinners Naomi grew up with in Memphis, where her mother cooked for 12 people every week, whether 12 people were coming or not. It was easy in a way that made her uncomfortable, because easy was not what she had prepared for. After dinner, he walked her to the elevator. They stood in the lobby for a moment longer than necessary. "You were always the best person I knew in a room," he said. "The way your mind works when you're looking at a space. I used to watch you do it and think I had never seen anything like it." Naomi looked at the elevator doors. "Marcus, I'm not crossing a line," he said. "I just think you should know that, as a professional observation." The elevator came. She stepped in and turned around. He was standing there with his hands in his pockets, looking at her with that same steady look in the conference room, like he had already decided something a long time ago and was simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. The doors closed. Naomi stood in the elevator and pressed a button for her floor and told herself very firmly that she was not feeling what she was feeling. She was only partially successful. The concept boards were due at the end of week 3, and Naomi was proud of them in a way she hadn't been proud of work in a long time. She had designed the interiors around a single idea she kept coming back to every time she walked the space. She called it earned warmth. Not the kind of luxury that was cold and untouchable, all marble and mirrors that made you feel like you didn't belong. The kind that felt like you had worked for something and arrived somewhere real. Deep walnut, with against warm cream walls. Brass fixtures that were rich without being loud. Textiles in terracotta and forest green, and a particular shade of burnt amber that she had spent 3 days sourcing. Lighting that felt like late afternoon sun, in every room regardless of the time of day. When she presented it to Marcus and his team, the room was quiet for a long moment after she finished. Then Patricia said, "This is exactly what he described. How did you get there so fast?" Naomi glanced at Marcus. He was looking at the boards with an expression she recognized. It was the same face he used to make when something moved him, and he wasn't ready to say so out loud yet. "I listened," Naomi said simply. Marcus looked up from the boards and met her eyes. "It's approved," he said. "All of it." That should have been the moment Naomi started packing. Concept approved, direction set. The rest could be managed from Chicago. That was the professional thing. That was the smart thing. She booked a flight for Friday. On Thursday evening, she was on the rooftop terrace, finishing the last of her vendor notes, when Marcus came up the stairs with 2 cups of coffee. He held one out without asking, and she took it without thinking, and that small automatic ease between them sat in the air for a moment. They stood at the railing looking out at the city. The Atlanta night was warm and smelled like rain that hadn't come yet. Somewhere below them a car was playing Anthony Hamilton low enough that it was more feeling than sound. "You're leaving tomorrow," Marcus said. It was not a question. "The concept is approved. I can run the rest remotely." He nodded slowly. He wrapped both hands around his coffee, cupped the way he always used to when he was choosing his words carefully. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She waited. "When you left," he said, "did you think I would come after you?" The question landed quietly, but it landed hard. Naomi looked out at the skyline and felt the 6 years sitting there between them like a third person on the rooftop. "I thought you might," she said honestly, "for a little while." "I almost did," he said. "I got in the car." I sat in that parking lot outside your mother's house in Memphis for 20 minutes. She looked at him. She hadn't known that. Then I thought about what you said when you left. That I loved what I was building more than I loved anything real. And I realized I couldn't argue with you. So I drove back. He paused. And I decided if I was ever going to deserve to be in the same room with you again, I had to first become someone who had actually chosen something beyond the work. Naomi's throat was tight. Marcus, I'm not telling you this to make you feel something, he said. I'm telling you because you're about to get on a plane tomorrow, and I spent 6 years not saying the things I should have said, and I don't want to do that again. The rain that had been threatening finally started, soft and warm, just enough to make the rooftop lights blur a little at the edges. Neither of them moved. I made mistakes too, she said. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. I left instead of fighting. I told myself I was protecting myself, but I was also scared. Scared that if I stayed, and it still didn't work, I wouldn't recover from it. Were you scared now, he asked. These past 3 weeks? She looked at him, really looked at him, the way she had been carefully avoiding for 3 weeks. The gray at his temples, the steadiness in his eyes that had not been there 6 years ago. The man standing in front of her was not the man she had left. He was someone who had gone through the fire and come out on the other side with something to show for the years. Yes, she said, terrified. He turned to face her fully. Then stay, not for the project. Stay because I would like the chance to show you that I know what I had and what I lost and what I would do differently. The rain came down a little heavier. Naomi felt on her face and her bare arms and didn't move. That is a very large thing to ask, she said. I know, he said. I've been waiting 6 years to ask it. She looked at him for a long moment. The city hummed below them. The Anthony Hamilton song had changed to something slower, something that felt like it was coming up to the building itself. She did not say yes. She did not say no. She said, I need to think. He nodded. Okay. She went back to her room and sat on the edge of the bed in her rain-damp clothes and thought about the version of herself that had stood in that doorway 6 years ago with a box of her things and tears she refused to let fall. She had made that choice from fear wearing the costume of strength. She had called it self-preservation, and it was partly, but it was also running. She picked up her phone and looked at the Friday flight on her screen for a long time. Then she called the airline and canceled it. She sat with that decision for a few minutes, feeling the weight of it and the lightness of it at the same time. Then she got up, changed her clothes, and went back downstairs. Marcus was still on the rooftop when she came back up the stairs. He was leaning against the railing with his back to the door, looking out at the rain-soaked city, and he didn't hear her at first. She stood at the top of the stairs for a moment just watching him, the way his shoulders carried something heavy even when he was still, the way he stood like a man who had learned to be patient because impatience had cost him something he couldn't get back. She walked toward him, and he turned when he heard her footsteps. He looked at her face, and then at the fact that she was standing there at all, and something in his expression shifted. Not dramatically. Marcus had never been dramatic. It was subtle. The way the tension around his eyes released, the way he straightened slowly like a man who had been holding his breath for a very long time. You came back up, he said. I canceled my flight, she said. He was quiet for a moment. The rain fell soft around them, warm and steady. Why? Because I spent 6 years being smart about this, she said. Being careful, keeping Atlanta at a distance, and keeping you at a distance, and telling myself I was healed when really I was just far away. She stopped a few feet from him. And I'm tired of being far away, Marcus. He crossed the space between them slowly. No ruse. The same way he did everything now, like he had made peace with the fact that good things required patience. He stopped close enough that she could see the rain on his face, and the way he was looking at her, like she was something he had prayed about and was not entirely sure was real. I have to tell you something, he said. She waited. When Patricia brought me Caldwell Creative's portfolio 8 months ago, I already knew it was yours. I had followed your work for years. I knew every project you'd done, every award, every write-up. He paused. I chose your firm because your work was the best. That part is completely true. But I also chose it because I had run out of reasons to stay away, and I needed one good reason to be in the same room with you that wasn't about me wanting something you hadn't offered. Naomi looked at him. 8 months ago. 8 months ago, he said. You planned this. I created a legitimate opportunity, he said carefully. And I hoped. She should have been annoyed. She turned that over and examined it honestly and found that she was not annoyed. She found that she was standing on a rooftop in the Atlanta rain looking at a man who had spent 8 months building her a door instead of just knocking, and she did not know what to do with how that made her feel, except that it made her feel something enormous. That is the most Marcus Westbrook thing I have ever heard, she said. The corner of his mouth moved. Is that good or bad? I haven't decided yet, she said, but she was already closing the last of the distance between them. She put her hand against his chest the way she used to, flat palm, feeling his heartbeat, and looked up at him. His heart was beating fast. He was not as calm as he looked. 6 years, she said quietly. 6 years, he said. She felt his hands come to her waist, gentle and certain, and then she stopped thinking about the years and the distance and the fear and everything she had packed away in storage bins in her chest. She leaned up and kissed him. It was not a dramatic kiss. It was not desperate or rushed. It was a kind of kiss that happens between two people who have already said everything that needed saying and are now simply arriving. Soft at first, then deeper, his arms pulling her in closer until there was no more distance left between them, and the rain came down warm around them both, and the Atlanta skyline glittered behind them like it had been waiting too. When they pulled back, he kept his forehead against hers, and they stood like that for a moment, breathing the same air, the city humming below them. I don't want to do this halfway, she said against his forehead. If we do this, I need it to be real. That's the only way I know how to do it, he said. Not the work. That was always the only way I knew. But you, he pulled back enough to look at her. You, I want to get right. She looked at him for a long moment. The rain, the lights, the feeling of his hand still at her waist, steady and warm. Then let's get it right, she said. He smiled then. All the way, the kind of smile she had not seen on his face in 6 years, and it hit her somewhere deep and quiet. He pulled her back in and held her there, her head against his chest, his chin resting on top of her locks, the two of them standing in the rain on a rooftop in Atlanta, like the 6 years were not gone but transformed, like they had been distance that was always going to become this, like all the waiting had been preparation for the moment when they were both finally ready. Below them the city moved and breathed and lived. Above them the sky kept giving. And Naomi Caldwell, who had walked out a doorway 6 years ago with a box of her things and tears she refused to let fall, stood in the rain and let herself have this. She had earned it. They both had. 3 months later, Naomi moved her operations to Atlanta. Bree cried happy tears on a video call and immediately started looking at commercial real estate for a second office. The Westbrook Tower interiors won a regional design award before the building even officially opened. Marcus framed the write-up and hung it in his office, and Naomi pretended to be embarrassed about it and was secretly pleased every single time she saw it. On the night of the tower's grand opening, standing in the lobby she had designed, watching people walk in and look around with that exact expression she had hoped for, that feeling of belonging somewhere beautiful and earned, Marcus came up beside her and put his hand at the small of her back. How does it feel? He asked quietly. She looked at the warm walnut wood and the amber light, and the people filling the space with their noise and their life, and she leaned into him just slightly. Like something I'm not going to walk away from, she said. He pressed a kiss to her temple, soft and certain. And that was enough. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. If this story moved you, hit subscribe for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means the world. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this one. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.